What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Deep Corner. This is episode 12. I'm Rob St. Clair, and I'm pleased to be joined today by a man just back stateside from his first pro season in Finland, from Team LVC, Mr. Blake Leeson. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Rob. Glad to be here.
Cool. Thanks for calling in, man. So you got back. You told me you got back like what 2 weeks ago. Are you going crazy yet? Stuck inside or what?
Yeah, I got back on the 13th and got up to Milwaukee a day or two later and have been in quarantine ever since. And yeah, it's definitely taken a wear on me, like I'm sure it is everybody else out there. But trying to do our part and stay inside and hopefully it gets handled in the short term.
So you've been able to work out at all? You told me something goofy about your workout setup at the house these days.
Yeah, so obviously we all know that we can't go to the gym at all or do any of those things we take for granted on a daily basis. So all I came back with from my season playing in Finland was two suitcases, and my parents recently retired, so they don't have any of my old weights or anything I had in the basement in our first house. So I've just been filling up my suitcases with whatever I can find in the house that seems heavy and getting on the ground and doing different exercises with the filled suitcases and just kind of improvising with some bands and just trying to stay active because when you get stuck inside, you go a little stir crazy sometimes. And sometimes I find myself working out twice, once in the morning and once at night just to burn off
Sure.
some energy and steam. Yeah.
That those might be videos that the people need to see on
I
on your Instagram and stuff
yeah.
like that. So let's just talk some volleyball. Let's talk about your kind of volleyball career from the beginning. You're the first Wisconsin boy I've had on the show so far, which is cool because everybody from that state likes a particularly good football team that I can appreciate. But tell me a little bit about the volleyball scene in the Milwaukee area and the state of Wisconsin in general, because I know your high school season is in the fall, right? Which is weird for most
Yeah,
of the
it's kind
country.
of backwards from a lot of the other places. Like I know Illinois is like opposite in the spring. So whenever we played for club, we'd always be like going into our club season. They'd be going into their high school season while they'd also be playing club. So that was pretty strange to see how they did that. But I mean, Milwaukee was an awesome opportunity. I played for North Shore and MVC, same club. They switched names my first year, so my 18th year of playing. They became Milwaukee Volleyball Club, and because Lightning folded during that time as well. So they were a great opportunity. I got to play with some really good talent. Some guys that went to UC Irvine, Carl Affelbach, Ben Playstead,
Oh yeah.
Hoyla, Nolan Reuter, McKendry, and Luke Turner went to Grand Canyon. So it was a lot of fun and got to expose myself to a lot of great talent in the Chicago area for majority of the tournaments that we played in.
Those are some stacked teams. Like my age group when I was playing was the year that Lightning won two national championships, like
Yeah.
the Trevor Novotny, Nick Olson,
hmm
uh, Peter Hutz, like those years. And yeah, that particular Milwaukee area team was insane. Did you ever find like that the weird empty window in the spring when you were playing club and all the Illinois kids weren't? Did that like affect your team's ability to compete, or did it affect your recruiting window at all? Do you think?
Well, I started playing so late that I don't think that I really knew much about that whole thing and how it worked. I didn't really start playing until my junior year of college or high school, and I didn't play club until my senior year officially.
Wow.
So I didn't really know much about the whole club scene or the dates or the time frames like you mentioned. I just kind of showed up and played, honestly. Um, but it definitely affected some of the guys on my team just for the flow and sake of things of how everyone else functions at different times and stuff like that. But it wasn't necessarily strange for me because I didn't know anything better or different, during that time.
Sure. So I'm really surprised to hear that you kind of got into the game that late, considering the great college career that you had. What was like your high school athletic career like, and what eventually pushed you towards volleyball?
I played our school growing up. Our district was like a huge football school. We won a bunch of state championships, had really good coaching staff, and just like historically, we always went to state or won to state. I think like in the 5 to 10 years that I was like middle school, high school, we won like 4 or 5 years
Wow.
total. So we were known for football, and I played football from like fourth grade up until 10th grade, and then I had a hand injury and a couple other things went down. I decided to make the switch from my sophomore year to junior year from playing football to volleyball. And like you mentioned before, it was the same season, so it's not like Illinois. So I had to make a decision to
Right.
switch because football and volleyball were both in the fall, so I couldn't play both, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would have. So I kind of changed it up a bit, and I started playing, and just got absolutely incredibly lucky with being able to get an opportunity at Ohio State. So it worked out really nicely.
So how did that come about? You had 1 year of club, your 18s year, like you said. A lot of the time when guys are getting recruited, it happens during their 17s year. How did you get picked up by a program that has the name recognition of Ohio State so late?
Yeah, I didn't get recruited. No one sought me out. I didn't expect them to. I would say I was a pretty big gamble on anybody's part,
Sure.
looking back at it. But I had a buddy that was in like video, and he took some video of me, and I sent it out to some coaches. The generic emails, just an email blast like, "Hey, I'm interested in your program. Like, take a look at me," because I knew I wanted to play in college. I wanted to play sports in college, and I thought it would always be football. And then as I got older and older, I started to look that I didn't have the frame for football, so I should probably switch something up. And I never really cared for basketball as much as I love watching it. So that's I sent out some emails and got a couple of responses from different universities, and Pete, the head coach of Ohio State, actually ended up showing up at one of my practices that year because he was actually looking at Carl Offenbach.
Oh yeah.
So he was in the area looking at him for as an opposite. So I just got super lucky with the timing, and he was able to see Carl and myself at two different practices, and he offered me a walk on spot, so it worked out really well.
Yeah, so you obviously you accepted it. You went to Ohio State and you redshirted your freshman year, which now makes a lot more sense considering how late you bloomed into the game. How much did you learn about volleyball that year that you redshirted?
Oh, a crazy amount, just like exponential. It was unreal, just because I came in, um, I came in like just absolutely in awe of everybody. I went on my visit and I was like, I love this place. It's so cool. I just fell in love with it. And when I got there, I was like, I'm by far the worst person in the gym. Like, was not even close. Like, my the coaches would definitely agree with that statement. I was pretty rough for sure. So being able to redshirt was like a blessing in disguise because at first I was like, I'm not staying 5 years because I wasn't budgeting for 5 years or any of that.
That's
So
true.
um, when they first said that, I was kind of looked at it as like a negative, but I was like, all right, worst case, I just redshirt and play three and leave. But yeah, that first year, just working in the weight room with our strength coach Andy Britton, I was the only one who redshirted that year because our class was only three people, which was kind of odd historically because that was the same year that I came in that the University of Pacific program folded.
That's right.
So those transfers got divided up into different schools, and we took on five of those Pacific guys.
Yeah, I know of at least three. That was a big moment in the kind of the landscape of Division One men's volleyball. Like you said,
Yeah,
yeah, Pacific, who was routinely, honestly, pretty good. They had a
yeah, they
pretty
were.
good thing going over there. They had a lot of highly recruited players. Then all of a sudden, poof, they just don't exist anymore. So
Mhm.
all those players wanted to continue their career somewhere, and the NCAA gave them the ability to go wherever they wanted and play right away. And a
Mhm.
bunch of them chose Ohio State. That's a good point.
Yeah, and there were a ton of them. All of them were like such a key part in us winning those championships. I mean, just it wouldn't have happened if those guys didn't come for sure. I mean, it just made our practices that much better and just gave our team that much more depth. I thought our second team that year could have beat a lot of teams. First team, that's how good our second team was, and that's what it takes. It was crazy.
Yeah, I believe that 100%. So, about the middle blocking position in particular, I can kind of assume because I did it when I was growing up playing, uh, that you for the first, when you were in high school at least, you probably just relied on your athleticism a lot, right? Like
Yeah,
you got a long
absolutely.
frame, you were just kind of getting up high and being athletic and trying to touch balls. But that position is hard, and there's a lot of thinking that goes on, and there's a lot of learning that goes on. Is there like a light bulb moment you remember from your freshman year or throughout your career at Ohio State? Something that you remember that you think leveled you up at the position in a way?
Yeah, I would think that I was a big like when I first got there, I was so afraid of making a mistake, like just absolutely terrified because you get in this big gym with all these really incredible athletes, and you're just like, all right, I can't screw up type thing.
Sure.
And that's probably like one of the worst mentalities to have. I think that once I got over the fear of like messing up and being okay with it and just moving on, as cliche as that sounds, that's when I finally started to like uh, get a lot better relatively, just because I wasn't letting my mind get in the way of like what I could accomplish physically.
That makes a lot of sense. And volleyball is extremely mental.
Yeah.
There's so much training that's done on skill, but when you get in a match, you have to be able to rely on that completely and be able to kind of think your way around the gym. And at the middle position, the blocking end especially is just so ridiculously hard that if your brain's turned off a lot of the time, you're just going to get torched. So
Which I still do very often.
everybody does. I am confident that it's the hardest when the ball's passed perfect on the other side. It's the hardest position in the game. And if anyone tries to argue with me about
Yeah,
that,
I'm.
I'll die
I've
on that
played
hill.
every position but setter and libero, and I'm with you on that to an extent as well. Obviously, every position has their own thing, but I think that's one of the hardest, like specific skills in volleyball is that read blocking
It's so
component.
hard. It's so hard. Uh, so you took your redshirt year, and then fast forward a year later, you're consistently in the starting lineup on a team that wins a national championship. Like that's an incredible progression from basically being a walk on 2 years before to didn't you get the championship winning kill the first year?
In 16, yeah,
Yeah, no big deal or anything.
yeah, it
Uh,
was cool.
your team was spectacular, and you still get to play with a handful of those guys on Team LVC now, which is something I want to talk about later. But uh, it was, I think everybody, at least I watching from a distance, knew going into that NCAA tournament that you guys were the team to beat, and just on matchups on paper, nobody really had your guys' number. You had so many strengths and almost no weaknesses. What was the mental approach to a season when you're kind of the favorite all the time?
Yeah, I think that I would agree with what you're saying for the 17 season. I definitely think that we were the team to beat. The 16 season, I thought that everybody thought we were gonna lose. I mean, according to all the things that I looked at and all the announcers or whatever, they didn't have us winning, which I understand, I guess, for that year because the team that we were facing in the NCAA tournament with UCLA and BYU. But yeah, I would say for 17, the we didn't look at it as we needed to defend the championship and like there was more pressure. We looked at it more of as a take it day by day and just try and focus on each opponent one at a time type of thing. Again, as cliche as it sounds, because when you add that pressure on to yourself, you're just gonna end up overthinking things. In my opinion,
Yeah,
it's
that's
it's just another season. Obviously, there are expectations. Like people expected us to perform to a certain expectation, like let's say winning or getting the top four that season, especially when you have basically everybody coming back. So all the guys on the team like have that in their idea of like, okay, that's the goal.
mhm.
We've done it. We can do it again, and we should do it again because that's the expectation. But I think that looking at it that way can cause some damage. So trying not to look at it that way.
Hard to do. Yeah, way
Yeah.
easier said than done. But you guys obviously pulled off the blueprint. Sorry, 2 years in a row is an incredible achievement because it's so easy for things just not to fall your way one of the 2 years. Like even if you have mostly the same team coming back like you did, one
One
injury,
injury,
yeah,
a rolled
one,
ankle. Yep.
yep. It's that simple, and then things can change completely. So you guys deserve all the credit in the world for managing to fight off the haters the first year and then keep your foot on the gas the second year to do it again. Now, that was in an interesting time in college men's volleyball, in my opinion, because the 2 years before, Loyola Chicago had won the championship. But
Hmm.
then, like all of the years before that and all of the years since, it's been won by the West Coast. And I've been fascinated by the differences in kind of regional style in men's volleyball in the country, and it's more evident than on the college level. Like for the West Coast to win a bunch of years in a row, except for Ohio State in 2011, and then for the Midwest to win it 4 years in a row, and then for it to go back to the West Coast is really interesting to me.
Yeah.
What do you think are the style differences between kind of Midwestern volleyball versus West Coast volleyball, and how did that work for you guys in your championship years?
I think that, and this is just my personal opinion. This could be wrong, but when we played the teams out west, it seemed more in 16, 17. It seemed more like the style of play that we had in terms of like rip the cover off the ball, live or die by the serve. I feel like there are more teams like that in the West Coast versus the Midwest. We've got some teams in the MIVA, at least from in my opinion, that play. I like to call it patty cake and keep the ball in and kind of low air percentage swings and low air percentage serves and things like that, and just playing smarter volleyball versus more aggressive. So I think that would be the biggest difference. But again, I think that varies from year to year, and when you have different personnel, you're going to obviously play your strengths. So if you don't have that capability, you're not going to go out and hit the crap out of the ball if you can't do it at a certain clip. But I think that for those years, I would say that would be the biggest similarity between the conferences, or differences between the conferences based on like our style of play for those 2 years.
Yeah, serving was obviously a strength of your teams those couple years for anybody who watched it. Like Nick Scherzen, one of probably the best servers of all time at the college level. You're in the top, I don't know, 10 or 15 in aces all time at Ohio State, right? Like Miles Johnson was ripping the cover off the ball all the time. Christie could jump serve the ball. You guys had just a legion of ridiculously good servers. And like I've talked about in a handful of my interviews so far, a lot of the time the game comes down to serving and passing, and
Yeah, absolutely.
it's just that simple. And fortunately for you, you don't have to pass the ball most of the time. But
So we signed up for.
exactly, it's actually not super often that you get a middle blocker though that has a sick jump topspin serve. Uh, when when in your career did you start learning the jump spin serve, and like kind of how do you approach it mentally when you're back there?
I don't know if that's the best question for me personally, but I mean, out of our teammates, those other guys were definitely the heavy hitters. Um, they had the green light. I was more of the all right. If it's a good toss, then I can rip at
Go
it. But
get
I
it,
was
yeah.
more of the keep it in play, and let's keep it going type of guy. So understanding your role and trying to play the best to the team was what I was trying to do. But for me, I think again, it's one of the hardest skills with blocking as well as like the serving aspect. It's just like um, it's for me just trying to stay as relaxed as possible, which is also the same thing as I try doing on the block, because like the more relaxed you are, the more like the faster you can make movements to the left or right, and the same thing with the ball in the air, and having your hand relaxed and all that stuff when you're tossing it, and just being as fluid as possible. As weird as that sounds, helps me the most, because the tenser I am, the more I tend to screw up usually. So I try and just almost act like it's as it's like practice, because I serve the best in practice, as I'm sure most people do as well.
Sure,
And the more you can treat your games like practice, or make them almost like the same or as similar as possible, I think you get the best results.
that makes
Uh,
sense.
so that's what I try and do in the service line. But again, it's like two different animals. Obviously, when you get behind there in the game and you're like, this one counts, it's a little different.
Yeah. Speaking of that, what was it like to win an NCAA championship on your home floor?
That was that was so I people always ask if was that like the best moment of your college career, and I always want to say yes, but it's always the second best moment for me, just because the first being the point that I scored, the last point, and just because I've never had like the first time you win it was like is like a surreal moment, right? We weren't expected to win it, so like the
Yeah.
feelings a little different because it's a little sweeter. And the second time we were expected, so it was more of like a relief. I don't know. It sounds bad to say, but it's true. Like I was like, oh, like okay, we did it, versus like, oh my God, we did it the first time.
That makes sense.
But being on the home floor was definitely like a surreal experience. Like, I mean, being in Ohio, it's not a volleyball state whatsoever. I mean, you got wrestling, football that are huge, basketball. So it's like people don't come to volleyball games in Ohio, especially for men. So having 85, 86, 8,700 people show up to St. John Arena and pack and have the lines out the door, to the shoe, it's like it was crazy experience. Just walking out of the locker room and and feeling like we were like in a legitimate sporting event. Felt like the football team.
Yeah,
It was a really cool experience. Something I'll definitely never forget. And just walking out of the locker room and not being able to hear yourself think, like
it's different.
it's a completely new atmosphere.
I think that's what everybody deserves at the NCAA level. Like I like to talk about the right before this season got cut short, which is just the worst, obviously. But
So,
right before that, there were matches. BYU at Hawaii
why?
played
Yeah, I
played
saw that.
played two matches. And Hawaii has an incredible volleyball culture. They were putting 10,000 people in the arena for both those games. Uh, the caliber of the volleyball played and like the quality of the crowds were just insane.
Yeah.
The atmosphere was ridiculous. I am glad that you got to experience that in your career. Not everybody does, because like you said, not every school has a volleyball spectating culture like a Hawaii or like a BYU. But uh, I think it's kind of proof of what the sport can be on a spectator level, and the athletes are all so good that you all deserve to play in front of crowds that big. So I'm glad that you got that opportunity, and on a national championship stage makes it all the more better, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And the places, the games you're talking about in Hawaii are incredible. That's one place that I was bummed I didn't get to play. Every other place that I wanted to play, I checked off the list. But I mean, that's an incredible atmosphere. I can't imagine, and that's for a regular game. And that's a
Yeah,
regular season
that was a
game.
regular season game.
Crazy part. Granted, they're on an island, so like everyone, I feel like knows about it more. So and they have more of a family, but it's incredible. I can't imagine 10,000 people in that arena.
Yeah, well, it's the volleyball culture there is kind of second to none. It's just really unique in on a national scale. The Hawaii thing.
Mhm.
I would love to go to a match there one day. So that was your redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore years that you guys won championships, and then you lost a lot of players. Just
Yeah.
plain and simple. You graduated. I don't know, off the top of my head, four starters, five maybe,
Yeah,
maybe even
Christy,
six.
Gabe, Driss, Miles. So that's four that I can think of that were all Americans. I think
Right.
it. So yeah,
So nobody can keep up that kind of a dynasty forever. Dynasty is not a great word to use for winning 2 years in a row. It's
yeah,
insane, but like it's just very difficult to sustain that for a million number of
any
years.
period of time.
Yeah, UCLA did it back when they had like a monopoly on the recruiting world, but nobody's been able to do it since. But like uh, in the perspective of your career, it's really kind of interesting. Like it might be different if I asked Christy or if I asked Miles. Like they went out on top. They ended their careers with a
On a
championship
win.
on a
Yeah.
win. For
Dude,
you, it
I'm
was
not heard of.
completely different. What were
Mhm.
those in particular? What was your fifth year, your redshirt senior year like compared to the championship years?
Yeah, I think it definitely was. It was way different. And don't get me wrong. I think dealing with that year was like I think that obviously we would have done better and should have done better. Granted, we didn't have as many injuries as we had. We wouldn't have done nearly as good as we had done in the past, but um, that year was more of a, for me at least, trying to get the younger guys to buy into a system and the younger guys to just buy into the fact that like, hey, you do X, Y, and Z in the weight room, you do X, Y, and Z that the coaches are saying, like this will work. You put in the extra reps before practice, like just trying to lead by an example
You were
and
proof of it.
as much as I could. I tried to be at least because I was like, if I came and from basically nothing and did okay, you guys can do way better than me because they were all way better recruits than I was ever. So, and I told them that because it was the truth. I was like, I was like, but yeah, I didn't want them to come in with a big head. I feel like that is like the biggest mistake um, that they could do, just because I try to put myself in their shoes, and it's like if a team just won two national championships, I'm being recruited by them, I'm coming in, I could definitely see it getting to their head a little bit,
Yeah.
and that's like the biggest issue in my opinion with like that whole um, thought process is that just immediately gets you into trouble because instead of like, oh, I'm here, I don't have to work hard, like I am a part of it. No, it's like the complete opposite. Like you have to work that much harder to like bust your balls in the weight room and stuff, and like you aren't given anything. You have to earn everything. Like you have to earn time in the court. Like, and I just tried to make it very. apparent that like that was the culture, and that like it's not a handout, like you don't just get stuff because you're, here at Ohio State,
Yeah.
so that's what I was trying to get into the freshmen and sophomores head those last 2 years. I would say the most. Whether I did that or not, who knows? But I've had a couple of guys talk to stay in touch with since then. So that's kind of what my what I tried to do that last year, just because obviously we weren't having the success on the record board per se, for
Sure.
sure. Um, Struggled in a lot of areas, and again with a ton of injuries, the most I've ever had in any season, honestly. But that's what I tried to do at least.
That makes a lot of sense. So we talked a little earlier. You just got back from Finland. You just played
Yeah.
your first year overseas. Uh, I want to talk about that experience kind of from all angles. Living in a different country that doesn't necessarily speak English all the time. I know Finland's better than several.
Yeah.
It's a whole new universe of different level of volleyball. First, what's the difference in the speed of the game between there and college?
Yeah, I think it's definitely some teams in the NCAA play this way. Obviously, it wasn't as good because the skill level wasn't as high, but Finland specifically was like playing super fast, like super fast.
Like offense is just like flinging it out there really fast.
Yeah, like we ran things called supers, which were faster than shoots.
Wow.
So yeah, it was interesting for sure, like getting adjusted to that, and just trying to make sense of it all. Um, and it was a good experience overall from the standpoint of like I learned a lot about myself, and just like what I want to do, and like different styles and things like that. But it definitely taught me a lot. I mean, Finland was a hard place to live from the standpoint of you see the sun for like 4 to 6 hours a
That's a
day.
good point.
Yeah, and like you never really know how that affects you until you get over there and you're in it, and it just really makes you appreciate things in life that you take for granted, I think, on a regular basis. So definitely, like that's one of the biggest things I learned. Like just like perspective is everything. Like again, as cliche as it sounds, like you have no idea until you put yourself in a situation where you know no, basically nobody, and like you don't see the sun for 6 hours a day, but or for only 6 hours a day. But the coaching staff was incredible. The guys were, guys that I'll have at my wedding. Great guys, and the culture there was awesome. You mentioned about people speaking English. That was one of my biggest fears, and almost everybody spoke English, especially like the younger
That makes
generation. So I
such a
didn't have a
big
problem.
difference.
Yeah, it made the transition like way easier because I was going over there with the thought that like maybe my coach a little bit, and maybe some guys, so at the most, but I was pleasantly surprised with that.
Yeah, that makes a really big difference. Me and Hosley talked
Yeah.
about volleyball being kind of its own language in addition to the spoken language, but there's only so many places that you can get just knowing how to play volleyball. There has to be a fundamental level of communication there, and it's nice that you were able to fit in with that without a huge barrier. You lived with a fellow American, a fellow VLA guy, right? Avery Ellsworth
I
was a roommate of
did.
yours.
Iceman.
Sweet, that must have been cool. I'm looking forward to getting Avery on the show sooner or later.
Yeah, no, it was really nice having him, and he was a big perspective guy, and that and living with him helped me a bunch. That first couple of months, just changing like the mindset a little bit, because when you're waking up to go to morning lift and it's dark outside at like 8 a.m., just like, all right, wears on you a little bit. So that he definitely helped a lot with that, but it was good to have him for sure.
Cool. And you also got to do what every middle has always dreamed of doing, and
Yes, I
that's play a little bit of the pins, right?
yeah,
You
I did.
got to play a little opposite. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so it was a crazy experience, actually. So it's a long story, but I'll give the short version. Um, I had an opportunity in January to transfer to France. I got contacted by a team, and I talked to my coach and talked to my agent. And I didn't not like Finland. I love Finland, and especially the guys and the coach specifically. But it was a pretty good opportunity, and I wanted to try and explore it. So I talked to the coach, talked to the president, and they gave me the all clear to transfer. and I was getting the paperwork done, blah blah. Long story short, the federation in France didn't approve the contract because it's backed by the government. It's all a um, bunch of detailed stuff. But long story short, I ended up going, and they fired our opposite because they were anticipating me going, and they were firing our opposite, and then going to use those contracts to hire a new opposite before the deadline.
Okay.
Well, they fired the opposite. I didn't end up going, and then the deadline passed, and they were like, we don't have an opposite.
Whoops.
Whoops is right. So, um, yeah, so in practice, before practice, we'd always play like back rows or warm up stuff like that. And the coaches came up to me and they're like, I think you could play opposite. And I was like, we had like 2 months left this season, and we didn't really have any other options. So I was like, yeah, well,
Let's do it.
let's do it. Whatever it takes to get some more W's, maybe we'll see. But yeah, I had a blast. I mean, it was a ton of fun, and I didn't do as horribly as I thought, and that was a plus. So let's put it that way. The last time I hit on the pin was in high school. So, but I got to hit a couple bics and a
Oh
couple
yeah.
pipes, and those will be on the highlight tape forever in whatever video I ever put together for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, that's every middle's dream, man. All anybody
Mhm.
wants is that one back row rip or to get to play outside for a
Mhm.
game or whatever. How much easier is blocking when it's only half the net?
Oh my God. Like it like after I was doing it, I was like, this makes me want this position. It's because I was like, this is so much easier.
It's so easy, dude.
It makes me think of blocking them on the beach
Yeah.
because you've got all this time to track the hitter and like line up and like drop your which hand or take a certain angle or whatnot, and it's like I felt like I'm like just so much further over. It's just yeah, it was really nice for a change, and hopefully it will help me when I go back to middle if that's where I end up. So that would be nice if that helps the transition again back, but we'll see.
Yeah, must be nice for that to be the life all the time, huh? Just blocking half the net.
Hmm.
So I wanted to ask about how you got hooked up with Team LVC because you're
Hmm.
not a New York guy, you're a Wisconsin
No.
guy, and you didn't
Hmm.
play college in New York, but Christy did.
Yeah.
So how did you get hooked up with the team?
So I was a roommate at Ohio State with Christy and Frenchie or Nick,
And
sorry,
like, yeah,
Nick Sturgeon, and we lived together for 2 or 3 years, and we were all in the living room one day, and he got a text from one of his guys back in New York, and they were like, "Oh, we're starting up a volleyball league. Like, would you want to play?" And Christy's like, "Well, I've got like teammates that are going to be graduating. Like, can I ask them? Like, would you take them? Like, these are the guys, these are the positions, blah blah." So he asked Nick and I was like, "Absolutely, you're kidding? Like, anytime that I can get out there and play more ball, like I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do." So he told us about it, and we got linked up with LVC and Chris, and I've just, regardless of like the success we had last year, like the guys are just incredible. Like I feel like it's just an extension of my Ohio State guys, and being able to play with the Ohio State guys like Max and Christy and Frenchie are just like, it's so enjoyable. Like disregardless of the result at the end of the match, just because like every time you get to step on the court with some of your best friends, like it just like clicks. Like I love playing with Christy. Like I know where he's gonna be. I know what I'm gonna get out of him. Like
yeah,
it just like, but that's with anybody you play with for an extended amount of time. And that's like the best part about it. And just like getting to play with those guys after college is like amazing. And like I can't thank LVC or like Chris enough for like giving us that opportunity because it's just so much fun.
yeah. That's special. You and your Ohio State guys accomplished a lot together, and it's fun to watch you guys on the court still because it's obvious that you have the chemistry, you have the history that goes back so many years. And I was talking to Hosley about the same thing because him and his guys go back several years as well, and it's been cool to see kind of the old school and the new school in a sense combine and form a pretty awesome on court product. So I have to ask about the Flamingos.
Yeah.
I asked Chris about the Flamingo origin story, which is awesome. Everybody loves the
I
Flamingo.
haven't even heard that story yet.
Oh, he'll
I'll have to ask him about it.
yeah, you gotta ask him about it. The thing that just blew me away is when your parents started showing up to matches and were wearing Flamingo stuff. That blew my mind. Tell the people the outfit that your parents were wearing at the first LVC match they showed up to.
Yeah, so and there's actually a backstory with that, and that's kind of it's why it's like ironic that our team that ended up being on was LVC and their mascot was flamingos because growing up we had this thing on our street that was like the ongoing like joke where we had this like metal flamingo that like we'd have like parties on our block growing up, and like we'd rotate houses, and whoever's house the party was at like that week or that month, we'd put like this huge metal flamingo in their yard, so everybody knew when they like were driving down, and it was just like the most random thing ever, but like that's just what we did. You know, it's just one of those weird things that, like we're just putting this in people's yards so everyone on the block knows like where's the next party at. You know
That's
what I mean?
awesome.
So from those parties on our block, they bought like they got super into it. Like they have these hats, you know, with like the flamingo legs hanging down and like the flamingo heads, and that's what they ended up wearing to the game that you're mentioning. But they've got a ton of like flamingo gadgets and trinkets and stuff just from like the old days of all those parties on our childhood block growing up. But yeah, that's it was just coincidence that it happened to be the same stuff. So they love going to the games and looking ridiculous. And hey, I tell them they don't have to come, but they eat it up. So they're gonna keep coming
It
if we
is
keep playing.
so awesome. I love the outfits. It's amazing. It's insanely coincidental that they already had the stuff and you happen to end up playing for a Flamingo team. That's
Yeah,
nuts.
exactly.
Well, yeah, everybody listen. Give Blake a follow on Instagram. It's on the screen. Blake_Leeson, right? We might have to peer pressure you into posting photos of your parents' Flamingo
I can
costumes.
do that.
Uh,
I can do that.
sounds like it can be arranged.
It can definitely be arranged.
All right. So if we ever get out of this whole quarantine business, which we're really hoping that we will, we're gonna put on some volleyball for you all to see and watch. Whenever we get out of here, what are you and the LVC guys looking forward to for this season?
I think we're looking forward to just like everybody else, just getting back to the normal. You know, like now that we've been in this quarantine for so long, me personally, like I'm just starting to realize all the things you take for granted. Like now, like you and I were talking about earlier, like we're driving anywhere and I'm like telling you how I'm going to put on a glove before I fill up the gas tank. You know,
Yeah.
it's just crazy, and the things that like you just don't think about, and now we're all paranoid about. At least me specifically. So I think that for sure, just like taking not taking that stuff for granted, and just valuing all like the friendships and all like the bonds and people you meet, because like you never know what's gonna happen. It's just like as cliche as that sounds, it's so true. Like in this, if this doesn't make it apparent to you, I don't know, I don't know what will.
Yeah,
So
dude. Seriously, I think everybody now is gonna has to have that same mindset of being thankful for the times that seem normal, and there isn't much better than the volleyball community at providing friendships and memories and all that stuff. So we're excited to get back to that, and we're excited to provide some great on-court volleyball for the people to watch. So uh, be patient with us. We'll get it to you whenever it's safe and reasonable to do so. So until then, until you can see Blake and his family rocking Flamingo stuff on the floor, thanks everyone for joining in. Blake, thanks for joining us. We'll see you all next time.
sounds good.